The final numbers edition of draft analysis and through the danger zone and the green zone, I'll give you 3 players I want the Jazz to draft and 4 players that make me super nervous if the Jazz draft them. Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow. That was the wrong open.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Love that woman's voice. Finally got it right. How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. Today, we have gone through, I'm super excited about this. We have gone through the 2023 draft, 2022 draft, 2021, 2020, and 2019 drafts. I now have 5 years worth of first-round draft picks, 150 data points, breaking players into the various categories we've talked about for weeks for the everydayers. And I have broken into green zones, where if you draft them, it looks really good, and the chances, and I'll give you the analysis on it, and red zones, where the rate of a player's statistics are in this area, the rate of success is far lower than the regular draft success. Okay? Does that make sense? Like, we all know after the 10th pick, it's about the 50% anyway. But some of these, if you're in a certain percentile, you're suddenly down to a 25 or 30% chance of success. So numerically important number. Doesn't mean it's foolproof, but numerically important. So we'll break it down, and I will give you 3 players that I would like to see the Jazz draft, one of which they probably can't get to, and 2 of which, and then 4 players if the Jazz draft, I'm super nervous. But you never know. All right, so that's the plan today. Our finals are set. It's Williams versus Topic. I'll talk about that in a second. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's a daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Lots of geeky numbers today. To the everydayers, you've been riding with me this whole time. It's awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you. If you're making this your first listen of the day, thank you very much. It's great to have you aboard. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code lowercase LockedOnNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. Okay. Let me quickly, we did danger zone. Oh, by the way, blowout yesterday. Nikola Topic, 83% over Dalton Connect. Blowout the day before with Cody Williams blowing out Rob Dillingham at 81%. So it's Cody Williams versus Nikola Topic in our 10th pick draft. It'd be interesting. If the Jazz had that choice, that would be really, really interesting to me. I think I would go, just so I'll have it on record, I would draft Cody Williams because the Topic ACL does matter a little bit, because I'm not, on the ACL doesn't bother me. I'm just not sure he can shoot. He is in a danger zone. He has some numbers that are in a danger zone, and that makes me nervous. I'll get to that. All right. Let's start. I'm going to do it. I'm trying to figure out what the best way to do this is, but we'll do piece by piece. So we did danger zone a little bit yesterday. So I've kind of gone back and forth all morning on this. So I went and looked through the 150 data points, and in the danger zone, in transition, which we talked about yesterday, if you're sub 40 percentile, then 9 of the 19 players that have done that become non-rotation players. I call that a non-finding. That's like right around 50%. That's kind of what it is. None of them become an all-star. Three of them have become starters, 7 rotation. So I actually think that the number on the danger zone towards transition is not mean you don't make it. So I'm going to move that out of like a major concern. This is going to be so much better for even next year as we make the improvement. On the green zone, fired up on transition, plus 90 percentile. Of the 29 players in the last 5 years that have been plus 90 percentile, 23 have gone on to be rotation players or better. 2 all-stars, 12 stars, really high-level stuff. So that jumps out to me. So who are those players? Well, this year there's 5 of them. I'm trying to find guys who are going to be first-round draft picks. Probably probably only 3 of these are first-round draft picks. Khalil Ware out of Indiana gets into this category. Ryan Dunn, the great defensive player, probably a second-round draft pick. Really can't shoot it at all, so he'll show up in some of the other areas. But Dunn's probably a second-round draft pick out of Virginia. But he is an elite transition player, which usually means elite athlete. The kid who keeps showing up in a lot of different things for us is Trevon Brazile out of Arkansas. He's 21 and a half. He's 6'10", 220. He's in the 94th percentile there. I have practiced this so much. I have the pronunciation guide written down. I know it's annoying. I can't pronounce his name. It is like a mental block. Zachary Riza Shea, I think, at least that's pronunciation guide, is in here. So is Donovan Clingan. So Riza Shea is going to get really interesting because he's going to show up in a bunch. He's the number 1 pick right now in a lot of mocks. He's going to show up on the other side of this too, which means I could not draft him number 1. Donovan Clingan being up here at number 1 in transition, not on a lot of attempts, but it is an interesting number for it there. So anyway, that's the green zone on transition. On isolation, if you were sub 20% aisle in isolation, so of all the players in your league, you're in the bottom 20%, 6 out of 9 become non-rotation players. Okay, well, that's like we're at like 67% right there. That's a much higher rate than average. There's only and there's 2 players we're not sure yet. Anthony Black last year and Benedict Mathurin could push this either way. So they're just kind of off to the side in the 5 years worth of data. Bezelis, who's a top 10 pick, is in this group for isolation danger zone. I've got isolation positive. I had no finding. The players that were in the top level isolation finding, 9 out of 18 made it, didn't. Absolutely no finding. So we move on. Let's go to pick and roll danger zone. So 9 players in the last 5 years. And I mean, we reduced this down to pretty tight numbers here. We could stretch it out a little bit if you wanted to. Sub 30%. 6 of the 9 that were sub 30% in pick and roll play ended up not being rotation players in the NBA. Okay, that's a lot. Like, that jumps out to me. This one I did kind of debate whether there's something valuable to be getting deeper into this and getting into a little bit deeper area because it actually continues. Like, if you take this all the way to 40%, by the way, on the pick and roll ball handler, you would add Tyrese Halliburton, who was a great numbers outlier despite his shooting was incredible. Zaire Williams, Nick Smith, Kevin Porter Jr., whose off the court stuff was bigger than his on the court, Cole Anthony, who's been okay, Bryce Sensabaugh, and it would just, you could kind of stretch this to 40%. If you actually, it gets really interesting if you keep stretching it, because then you get Osam Jang, who's doesn't seem headed in the right direction, Dyson Daniels, Jeremy Shohan, James Bouknight, Asur Thompson, Blake Wesley, Cameron Johnson, Scoot Henderson at 45%. So there's some room here where this actually might be more significant. And over the years, I think we'll analyze this together and we'll try to figure it out. But I will tell you right now, in the danger zone, in the narrowly defined danger zone that we have on by doing this as I have right now, which is the pick and roll on the pick and roll players, this is where Riza Shea shows up again now as a negative. So now you're telling me that I've got a stat where 67% of the players, 2 become a starter, 1 of them a rotation player, becomes, and they don't become rotation players, and I might draft him number 1 and he falls under that? Wow, I don't know if I could do that. Donovan Clingan might be the number 1 pick of this. Should be there's okay. Let's stop. Okay, here are the other players. Kevin McClure out of Kansas. He's an older player. Bezelis shows up here again as a negative. Keyshawn George, the 6'9", 205 combo guard out of Miami. And then if we're stretching it to 45, it's just worth putting this in here. Justin Edwards and Jacoby Walter. Okay? So that one's interesting. But the real red flaggers are Reza Shea, Bazelis, George, McClure, and then maybe Edwards and Walker. Okay? The green zoners on the pick and roll. And this is pretty good. 16 of the 22 players over the last 5 years whose pick and roll percentage has been 85 percentile or better have gone on to be rotation players in the NBA. 7 of them have gone on to be starters. Now, let me say one thing about these numbers. The one thing that's busted these numbers is old players. Ty Jerome, Dylan Windler. The numbers cannot believe that, what was his name? Dylan Windler didn't make it. Like he peaked out on every number imaginable in a bunch of our systems. Chris Duarte was unbelievable and like great, but really, really old. Like he's the oldest of the old. So there is a level where Duarte was, I think, 25, 24 at the time. The older the players, they've kind of busted the system a little bit. David Roddy came out pretty well in our system, hasn't become an NBA rotation player. He was older. Dylan Windler is the other one I mentioned. It's a mystery to me that he hasn't made it in the NBA. But was really old. He was 23, 24 years old when he came in the league. He's still bouncing around. Interesting player. He ended up getting drafted 26th by the Cavaliers and has never quite clicked in. Maybe we should go sign him. But he was 23. So that's my one note for you before I give you these. The players in the green zone, the one thing that keeps busting the system is older players. And there's a bunch of good older ones. We'll have those for you. So we continue here on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by my good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai. Oh my gosh, I was down at Murdoch Hyundai, the brand new one at 4646 South State Street the other day. And I got a new car. I didn't get it. I get to borrow it. It's the Palisade. It's so gorgeous. And I'm not going to tell you what you think is reasonable or I think is reasonable, but I would just say this. So the Palisade I'm driving is a little under $50,000, which is a lot, but I can't imagine spending more money for a car if that's available for $50,000. It is so gorgeous. 2 seats in the back, 3rd row if necessary, drives like the smoothest ride, so comfortable, so in control, just beautiful. The Hyundai Palisade. Love it. Oh my gosh, it's so gorgeous. We've bought 2 of the Santa Fe's and the Ioniq 5, so I'm backing up my words with my paychecks on the Hyundais, and the Murdochs take great care of you at 4646 South State Street. Also in Logan and in Linden, so feel free to stop by, visit there, or email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so we can set you up with the VIP meeting that you deserve as a Locked On everydayer. That's dlock09@gmail.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports game. You pick more or less and get rolling. And here's what we have for you today. We have a chance for you to get a $100 first deposit match with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. Make the Prize Picks lineup in less than 60 seconds, then pick more or less on 2 to 6 stat projections. And if you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lower select player stats projections on Tuesdays with increasing chance to win for losing lineups on Fridays. It's why it's the #1 fantasy sports app at over 5 million active members. It's Prize Picks, and it's so fun. So do it now. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Download the app today is probably better, and use the code LockedOnNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. Download the app, use the code LockedOnNBA today. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, so the old guys have caused me problems. I just want to warn you on that, because 2 old guys are going to show up a lot, and then I'm going to back off them a little bit, but I think they're worth considering. All right. Have you made the switch yet to Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 national sports channel that's available for you on Amazon Fire TV and on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube? Go check it out. Big new show coming, by the way. Big 6. going to be the 6 biggest stories of the day from the first 7 minutes each from our local experts who know it better than anyone else covering sports for you. So I'm excited for that show. All right. So I gave you the pick and roll danger zone players are Reza Shea, Bazelis, George, McClure, and possibly Edwards and Walter. Here are the green zone pick and roll players. My old guy out of Creighton, who makes me happy that he's there because he's actually really fun to watch. Baylor Shireman. He's 6'7", 198, fifth-year senior, 24 years old. Quick take is I think I would take him rather than Dalton Connect, which is a hard take. People think I'm crazy. Terrence Shannon Jr., who was found that he's not guilty of rape, which is always a better day than the other one. Woo! He's 24 years old. So the 23.9. That's just not a sentence you want out of a player. Oh, it's good to find that out on the draft week. Yeah. All right. So those 2 guys are there, and they jump out as top pick and roll players. Here are the others. Reed Shepherd, Jared McCain, Nikola Topic, Devin Carter, Rob Dillingham, Bub Carrington. So of those 16 of the 22 players in the last 5 years who have become at an 85 percentile or better pick and roll rating have become rotation players in the NBA. 2 all-stars, 5 starters, 9 rotation players. And those are Baylor Shireman and Terrence Shannon Jr. with a little caveat of how old they are. Then Reed Shepherd, Jared McCain, Nikola Topic, Devin Carter, Rob Dillingham, Bob Carrington. Green zone. Spot up shooting green zone. Let's go green zone still. Good stuff. There have been 24 players in the last 5 years whose spot up shooting is in the 90th percentile or better, and 18 of the 24 have become rotation players in the NBA. 9 of them starters, 2 of them all-stars, and 7 of them rotation players. This is where I'm going. I need guys who can shoot. Reed Shepherd, Jonathan Furpey, who is the youngster out of Kansas. I watched him a little last night. Kind of like him. Rob Dillingham. Here's another old guy, but interesting. The more I watch him, kind of interesting. And I'll be watching a lot this week. Well, next week, while my guy Leaf Tulane is doing the show, I'll be in Northern California, but Leaf will be doing the show, but I'll be popping on. The Marquette point guard, Tyler Kolek, 23 years old. Again, makes me nervous. 23 years old. To do that, our problems. But he's on there. Dalton Connect, Deron Holmes III, and KJ Simpson. KJ Simpson out of Colorado. We've watched a lot of Cody Williams. KJ Simpson has looked really good on a lot of that film. And he's got some interesting numbers here. So in spot-up shooting, green zone players, Reed Shepherd, Jonathan Furpey, Rob Dillingham, Tyler Kolek, Dalton Connect, Deron Holmes, KJ Simpson. 18 of 24 of those players who have been drafted in the first round have gone on to be rotation players in the NBA. That's a high rate. Spot up danger zone. And this is a danger zone. 14 players have been sub 40 percentile. 10 of the 14 became non-rotation players. Now, caveat. Alfred Sengun, Derek Lively, Victor Wembanyama, have Walker Kessler, Precious Achiuwa, and Isaiah Stewart, all big guys I took out. Achiuwa and Stewart are interesting because they probably wanted them to shoot and they didn't. And Victor is 7'4", but it's interesting he's in here. You can count him if you want because he's just kind of an anomaly. So of non-bigs whose spot-up shooting has been sub 40 percentile, 10 of the 14 have become non-rotation players in the NBA. And here are the players. There's only one starter. It's Jaime Jaquez last year. We'll see if he stays being a starter. The other ones that have made it, and I don't know if they totally made it, are Patrick Williams, who's 6'9", Jonathan Kuminga, who's the first player I found who's shooting in college or in pro the year before, was as bad as some of the Ron Holland, Stephen Castle, these guys, and Peyton Watson. So, still suspect of where those guys fit. The only 4 guys in the last 5 years whose shooting percentage, spot-up shooting percentage is in the sub 40 percentile that have gone on to be rotation players are Jaime Jaquez, Peyton Watson, Jonathan Kuminga, and Patrick Williams. Here are the players that fit into that this year. This is super interesting. Stephen Castle, Bazelis, Saloon, Ron Holland, and Ryan Dunn. That's 5 pretty high-profile player. Dunn, an interesting player. We talked about he's an elite athlete. So he's got factors going both ways. Stephen Castle, Bazulius, Salon, and Ron Holland. Salon, everyone's in love with. He's 18 years old. He's the youngest prospect. All this kind of stuff. Those are 4 top 10 picks right there. Possibly. Holland, we'll see what happens. So it's interesting, right? The spot-up green zones were Shepard, Furpy, Dillingham, Kolek, Connect, Holmes, and KJ Simpson. The danger zones, Stephen Castle, Bazulius, Salon, and Holland, and Dunn. Okay, let's go to the next one. Catch and shoot. We'll stay in the green. We'll stay in the red zone. Some of that's pretty similar. Or the danger zone. This is sub 35%. Again, taking out Sengun, Lively, Kessler, Okongwu, Stewart, Precious Atra, and Brandon Clark. Bigs. So 19 non-bigs. 14 of the 19 have become non-rotation players in the last 5 years. 14 of the 19. Those that have become rotation players, Anthony Edwards, pretty damn good. Jonathan Kuminga, Peyton Watson, Josh Giddey, but Tyrese Maxey. By the way, somebody on the chat room of YouTube, your numbers suck if you missed on Tyrese Maxey. Like, the numbers are not going to be 100%. But if you really think about a draft, players make it 50% of the time after the 10th pick. They make it about 70% of the time before that. So it's about a 62% rate. If I've got some numbers that are suddenly shoving one way or the other on that, far enough, I think they're significant. But it doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. And if you don't understand that about numbers, then I'm sorry. So I think 14 out of 19 is like right at it's about 74%, right? Yeah, 74% of these players, that's catch and shoot rate is sub 35%, don't make it in the NBA. That's a high rate. Ryan Dunn, Ron Holland, Stephen Castle, Bazelis, Nikola Topic. And you have to vote today on Topic versus Cody Williams in the finals for the Jazz pick. That's my issue on Topic. It's not the ACL. I don't mind the ACL. I don't mind him sitting out a year. I don't know that he can shoot. If I knew he was good, I'll let him sit for a year. That's fine. But I don't know that he's good. At least from the numbers. Who are the catch and shoot darlings? Because the catch and shoot darlings, 13 of the 18 players that have been catch and shoot over 90 percentile go on to be rotation players in the NBA. Have that for you next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. We just made 2 of the greatest hires for our social media team. If you do not follow Locked On Podcasts on social, please do. You'll notice a massive change. Just stars. And they're 2 different people, and they're wildly different, and that's because you can use places like LinkedIn to get this done. If you're a small business owner, it's awfully hard because there's not enough time in the day. But with LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It's a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does it all while making the process easy and intuitive. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time and resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. Then they just even launched a feature to help you write job descriptions, which is much helpful. 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for a reason. So you can do it today. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Next week, NBA draft expert Leaf Tulane carries the show. I'll be back Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Wednesday's draft. Wednesday, Thursday. So it'll be super fun. Look forward to it. Okay. Who are the catch and shoot darlings? Because 13 of 18 of these become rotation players in the NBA. Reed Sheppard, Rob Dillingham, Tyler Kolek, Cody Williams, KJ Simpson, Jared McCain, and Keyshawn George, who the Jazz are not allowed to draft. Those are your catch and shoot darlings. 13 of 18 first-round picks over the last 5 years, who've catch and shoot percentiles been over 90%, have gone on to one's an all-star, 6 starters, 6 rotation, 5 haven't made it. And the guys who haven't made it usually are old. That's where my numbers have busted. The Dylan Windlers, the Chris Duartes, the Ty Jeromes, those guys have busted my numbers. None of those guys are old. Reed Sheppard, Rob Dillingham, Tyler Kolek, Cody Williams, KJ Simpson, Jared McCain, Keyshawn George. Okay, one more. Off the dribble. So I was really convinced that getting your shot off the bounce was a super important metric. In fact, one of the things I looked at last night in our listing of all of our first-round draft picks, of our 150 first-round draft picks, was just who took the most. Because I actually thought that was going to be something that kind of told me whether or not somebody was going to be an NBA player, is if they, in college, in the crowded game that is college, whether they could just get shots off. So here are the players who've taken the most off-the-bounce shots. David Rudy, Paulo Banchero, Asur Thompson, Marcus Sasser, Patrick Baldwin, Dyson Daniels, Jed Howard, Brandon Miller, Nasir Little. It didn't happen. Didn't pan out at all. And then I think there's actually something that's gone wrong with some of my numbers there because it just seems funky. So I did not find anything. In fact, I found absolutely no correlation in danger zone off the bounce. I did find that if you're making off the bounce threes, you have some success of making league. 13 of 19. Not quite as good a percentage as some of the others, but still worth noting that 13 of the 19 players in the last 5 years, so 68%, that have had over 80 percentile make it. I reduced it down to 85 percentile and then suddenly had a hit rate that was really high. So 9 of 12, 75% of all players whose off the dribble was 85% or better. 4 became starters, 4 rotation players, 1 all-star. Here are the players in this draft that have that. Reed Sheppard, Terrence Shannon Jr., KJ Simpson, Harrison Ingram, who I kind of like, by the way, Baylor Shireman, and Alex Sarr sneaks in here. So that was at 75%. If you sneak it down to the 68%, you add Jared McCain and Rob Dillingham. But there's no danger zone on that one. So that's it. So here's my consensus on this. If I have to take 4 players I'd like to see the Jazz draft, if they draft, I'm like, yep, this works. And frankly, Bryce Sensabaugh was one of them last year. Reed Sheppard. I just don't carry 6'2". I just love the way he plays when I watch it too. Push ahead passes, vision, hard, but the numbers are incredible. 2 old guys. I'm taking if one of these guys is available with our 28th or 32nd pick, 29th was a joke. For those who've been with us all week, I just screwed that up like a million times. 29th or 32nd pick. I think I take, and I got to do the background check on Terrence Shannon Jr. and understand what that was all about, right? Certainly. And they're really old, but I'm looking at Terrence Shannon Jr., Baylor Shireman at that point. Some of the numbers are just too good. And I really like Jared McCain. I've liked him from the first minute I watched him. Just does everything right and efficiently, and he's young. Now, the only concern, I brought this up about him, but this was not as big a deal last year, is he's a year old. Like, he literally is a year old. Like, he should have been, when he was a junior, he should have been a senior. When he was a sophomore, he should have been a junior. When he was a freshman, he should have been a sophomore. So that's a little worrisome. And the final one, and maybe I would take, this is probably where the numbers would tell me to go with the 28th pick of the draft, is KJ Simpson. He's 22, a little older, 6'2", 175 pounds, lead guard. Obviously, if you drafted McCain earlier, wouldn't do it. Cody Williams, who we have in our draft, is at 10. And he doesn't peak out on a bunch of numbers, but the catch and shoot numbers are real. He's in that range. It makes you think it would work. His isolation numbers are pretty good too. I just don't have any finding on that. I had no finding that isolation helped, but his isolation numbers would have put him in the green zone of isolation. I just didn't come up with them. The following players who are high profile make me super nervous. Bazulis is just all over this list. Now, so's Ron Holland. And is that just because the G League sucked last year for these guys and G League Ignite was a disaster and they were down 20 in every game and it's not a good way to judge players? And Jonathan Kuminga was as well, and his numbers were just as bad, and that we should just dismiss that? Like, this is the funny thing about numbers, is you can look at them and then you can start to make excuses of why they're the case and why they shouldn't work and all these things. Riza Shea is all over this also. I don't know. If I'm Atlanta, I'm going Klingon or Shepard. And Stephen Castle, who I know is on high up on people's boards, is also in this list. Might not have been the worst year to be at 10. Because frankly, if you're not at 10, you're deciding between Bazelis, Riza Shea, Holland, and Castle. And they're all four of them would make me so nervous with the statistical stuff I've just shown you. Gets interesting. All right, you get to vote today. Cody Williams or Nikola Topic? Topic right on the edge of one of the danger zones. Cody Williams is in a green zone. Does that sway you plus the ACL? Next week, my guy Leaf Tulane, I'll be listening in, maybe chatting with you in the chat room. Leaf Tulane will be taking over the show. I'll be back with you next Monday. Hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for everything. Great, big week, a lot of stuff, a lot of emotions. Appreciate all your support. Appreciate the fact that you're a part of this group. Appreciate that Locked On is what it is. So thank you very much. We now send you the 24/7 national streaming sports channel, Locked On Sports Today on Amazon Fire or on YouTube. If you're over on audio, make the switch over and watch it on Amazon Fire or on YouTube. It's Locked On Sports Today.